Hey, what's going on, everyone? We're going to be talking about how to eliminate pain while deadlifting. So if you're one of those people where, hey, you did a heavy deadlift day, or maybe you do CrossFit, so you did a conditioning workout deadlifts, the next day you get this kind of sharp pain in your back, or maybe it's that numbing pain where when you get up out of bed, you kind of walk funny. We want to help you with that, because any pain that you feel is your body communicating to you. So now imagine if you're trying to communicate something to a friend and he ignores you and keeps ignoring you. One of two things normally happens with people. Either A, you get mad at the person and you do something to get their attention even more, or you give up on them. So now let's imagine your body is communicating this pain to you, something's wrong, and you ignore that pain. Your body either is going to do something that gets your attention way more, so all of a sudden you wake up and you can't get out of bed because your lower back hurts so much, or your body gives up on you and that pain again gets so bad, your body's just like, I'm done, snap, that's when something goes really bad, and then we have a much more serious issue on our hands. So we want to tackle these things. Any type of symptom that like stops you from working out or makes you question whether or not you should deadlift, we want to try and tackle it, break it down. Now the truth is, I can't be like, hey, here's the one thing you need to do to fix your deadlift. Here's the thing that causes pain. We can't tell you exactly. We don't want to guess. We want to assess to get there. So number one, real simple. You don't need a PVC pipe to do this. We want you to round down. It's perfectly fine to round your back. Lock out those knees. Touch your fingers to your toes, maybe to the ground. And we want to hang out there. And we want to think about what we feel. Do you feel tension in your lower back? Does it hurt? Do you feel your hamstrings tight? Do you feel tightness behind the knee, your calves? Do you feel any tingling going on at all? So if you feel tingling in your calves or down the line, right, that's nerves, right? Any type of tingling or numbness, we can go back to nerves on it. If you feel tension or pain in your lower back, probably not a good thing, right? Hamstrings, that's where we want to feel it. Right behind the knee, a lot of times that's your hamstrings as well, but if we feel tension down our calf and our lower back or tingling, we probably don't want you deadlifting right away, okay? And we want to do this cold. So what do we do about it? So that nerve tension, that kind of tingling sensation, a lot of times we see people think, oh, my hamstrings are so tight, that's why I have a hard time deadlifting. What I've personally found is that a lot of times that's not the case. So we have people do, it's called nerve flossing. There's all these other terms. Again, you can call it flossing. It might not be flossing your nerves, but it's kind of a nice way to think about it. So I'm gonna grab a seat on the ground. I'm gonna lay completely flat. I'm gonna grab behind my knee, point my toes to the ceiling or to the sky, and then point them to my face. And you're gonna feel this tingling, nerve flossing sensation up and down your whole hamstring. You might even feel it all the way into your lower back. And we're just gonna do this 10 to 20 times each leg for a few sets. And what you're going to notice right away is that as soon as you get up and you try that toe touch again, I only did the one side. When I go down, this side is a lot easier to get to the ground. So we didn't stretch anything per se. We didn't loosen up muscles, but if we have a lot of tension in our nerves, sometimes we'll hold the muscles contracted a little bit, or they'll just lock everything in so we can't move through a full range of motion. All right, so test, retest, let's see how you do. Now when it comes to actually stretching the hamstrings, if that happens to be the case where, man, it's really hard for me to go, and we know it's your hamstring mobility. Personally, I like to load the hamstrings, right? We deadlift, we squat, we do all these movements, we load up these muscles a lot. Just hanging out and being like, oh yeah, stretching my hamstrings probably isn't gonna do much to change the structure. So for me personally, I've seen a lot of results and have seen a lot of other people get results just by standing hip width, kettlebell, right? In your hands, brace, lock everything in, and I'm gonna just go down the end range and hang out down here. 3, 5, 7 seconds, don't get lightheaded, make sure you keep breathing. Stand tall. Now I like this a lot because it kind of hits two different things. Number one, we are loading end range of those hamstrings. And number two, we're working on endurance and stamina through our core, right? So we're gonna find out real quick whether or not we have the conditioning to do a bunch of deadlifts or the capacity in our core. All right, which brings us on to a second way we can kind of work on these deadlifts and being pain-free. So if you get fatigued in your core fast, all right, simple way we can do this, we can do some back extensions, see when you burn out. We can do hollow holds, kind of find out your capacity there. If you get burned out fast doing in your core, if you don't have relative strength in your core compared to your lower body, when we start deadlifting a lot or doing heavy weights, this is going to give out way before everything else. And we start using different muscles to stabilize, and our spine sometimes doesn't like that. All right, so one way to think about it is if our legs are our engine, our core is like our transmission, right? So if you've ever driven a car that had a weak transmission or really strong engine, eventually that transmission blows up. Same thing happens with your back and core. Now imagine if we had a really bulletproof transmission in a car and the engine wasn't quite as strong. Would anything go wrong? No. If anything, we have room to build. So we want to think about our core being relatively stronger, relatively stiffer than our upper body and our lower body. If our upper body gets too strong compared to our core, we run into issues. If our lower body gets stronger than our core, and I'm talking about not just 1 rep max strength, but stamina, right? Your capacity to keep using that core will run into issues. So another way we can work on that core is, hey, go lighter, build up some volume, right? Stay within a comfortable range, gain some reps, maybe do 20 to 50, right? A couple times a week, make sure you're pain-free, let's gain some capacity. But I also like the ability to do one-armed or one-leg work. So for warm-ups, you're getting ready to deadlift, maybe you got a lot of hip hinging. I personally like to see a lot of just suitcase-style deadlifts because it will teach us how to brace, right? So we're not rotating one way all the time because most of us deadlift in a mixed grip, so we end up a little twisted, all right? I also thoroughly enjoy one-legged, somewhat stiff leg deadlifts. Again, our goal is not to rotate that body, we want to fight that rotation. And what this does is it teaches our body how to fire muscles that we might not realize we need to use when we do deadlifts. And it also gives us a light, safe way to work on that capacity through our core and our lower back. All right, the last reason that I can think of that a lot of people have a hard time deadlifting or get pain is that they don't have body awareness, right? So if you're a trainer, if you've coached people, you'll see like, okay, all I want you to do is push your hips back, and we get a lot of this. All right, let's push the hips back. And they end up in this position with the hips tucked under. Now, if you think about it, if you're a typical person, you're sitting 8 to 10 hours a day sometimes, car ride, hey, sitting at the gym waiting to work out, you're sitting at work, you're sitting eating lunch, you're sitting at home watching TV, right? If I'm spending all that time in this position, because this is usually what happens when we sit, we've spent the vast majority of our day in this kind of curved spine, hips tucked underneath, and our bodies are so incredible, they'll adapt to this position. And that's where we see people actually like grow fat pads in their upper back to try and pull their heads up. And I call it no acid all disease. You end up having a really flat butt, right? You got no butt. Our bodies will adapt to that, and then they'll want to move in that position. So imagine if I just took my arm and I walked around all day like this. All day, 8 to 10 hours a day like this. What do you think will happen to your arm? It's really hard to unglue it, right? So that's sitting. Now our hip is really hard to unglue, and we get locked into funky positions in our hip, and we have a hard time hinging. Now the same way, imagine like, hey, I'm not gonna use my bicep 8 hours, 10 hours a day. Just let it hang. I can't turn my arm, I can't bend at the elbow, I can't stabilize the shoulder, just let it hang. Your bicep would start to fatigue and atrophy, right? Not fatigue, excuse me, atrophy. It would start disappearing. So sitting for 8 to 10 hours a day, what do you think happens to your core? We're not using it as much, so it starts to atrophy, and now when we go to deadlift, you don't have the capacity to do what you need to do there. And you don't have the awareness because we spend so much time in flexion instead of neutral or learning how to get into some extension. So to kind of learn and get some body awareness, video yourself and start really small. Set up your phone, right? We take pictures, Instagram, all stuff all the time. Let's work on moving better with it too. Start with a PVC pipe or a 45-pound bar. Hip hinge back, pause. Is your weight in your heels? Is your back neutral or is it in flexion? Overextension, right? Do I see my knees soft, but my knees aren't traveling forward? Is my hip actually going back? What we'll see when a lot of people do this when they first start it is this position. My weight's in my toes, the bar's way away from me, and my hips didn't go back, my shoulders just came forward. So pause, reset. Let's gain some body awareness. Start working it down a little lower, until you have enough body awareness that you don't have to think about it as much once we start loading you up. Now, besides just using a PVC pipe, you can use a kettlebell to do this, to load it a little bit, as well as one of my favorite things is the back extension. So not back extension, excuse me. A lot of people get confused between hip and back extension. I want you to do hip extensions, right, on the GHD. So this is where your hip only moves and your spine's supposed to stay neutral the whole time. Because this helps us build awareness through these muscles and how to stabilize. Because most of us don't use them as nearly as much as we think we do. We have a tendency to use our quads to kind of pull everything off the ground. We're very quadsy, especially in the CrossFit world. So again, test, retest. Let's see whether or not you can touch your toes without getting nervy. Maybe you do have to stretch. You should feel it in your hamstrings. If you feel it in your lower back, I would start taking the weight not from the ground, lift it up, stay in a pain-free range of motion, play around with some of that single leg, single arm deadlift variations, build some capacity. Let's find out what's going on. Now, if the pain doesn't go away as you go through this, go see a professional. A lot of times as coaches, even as just people that work out, we think we're gonna find all the answers in the gym. The truth is the gym a lot of times, especially in the CrossFit world, will show our weaknesses And if you can't take care of yourself, if the pain is not getting better, go see someone that can help you, okay? Your trainer doesn't know everything in the world, and hopefully they'll send you to someone that has the ability to help you and test to make sure your lower back, you don't have a pinched nerve, herniated disc, any of these other issues. Again, all right, so try out some of these drills. If you do get that back pain after deadlifting, let's modify it, let's change it, let's change the range of motion, let's change the weight, let's build some capacity, hit that range of motion, let's deadlift pain-free. If you liked it, please let us know. If you have any questions, please comment below.